If we are discussing the volume that is rarely talked about, then Volume 2 will be one of the candidates for the most forgettable volume. Not only because it was an early volume that some readers feel satisfied with just the anime, but also the content of Volume 2 is rarely talked about in the future volumes. The whole story of Volume 2 revolves around Sudo's trial, but if you have already read Classroom of the Elite until the newest volume, Sudo's trial is not something that you would see mentioned often. Even in Volumes 3 and 4, Sudo's trial has already become a memory that most people forget about, which means that Volume has near zero significance for the series as a whole. However, that is not the only reason why Volume 2 doesn't leave a lot of impression. It has a few moments where it shines, but for overall evaluation, this volume is one of my personal least liked volumes. For starters, it's hard for me to feel any emotional connection with Sudo and Sakura, who are the focus characters of this volume. It's true that Sudo will get more development in the later volume, but in this volume, Sudo's character is simply unbearable. He was a hot-tempered person that you surely don't want to be around because he is always causing trouble. Even when he is caught up in the trial, he doesn't show any remorse to actually admit that he is causing trouble to the others, and he doesn't even say thank you to Horikita or Ayanokoji for helping him. He later got a reality check from Horikita at the end of the trial, and he actually showed some improvement in the end, which is the only thing that saved his reputation in this volume. However, since Volume 5 took Sudo's development to another level, this volume feels lacking comparison. When someone talks about Sudo's development, Volume 5 will be the first volume that comes to mind because he opened himself to Horikita and learned to be less angry, and that's why Volume 2 became forgotten. As for Sakura, the impression that she left in the story is even more forgettable than the volume itself. It's not like she is a bad person, but her character is so ordinary that it becomes hard to actually like her. She is a shy girl wearing glasses and doesn't have any friends, and the entire plot of this volume is to force her to become braver to save Sudo from his trial. She actually has a chance to shine even with that ordinary story, but sadly her character is overshadowed by Ichinose. Not only do they have similar designs, but Ichinose's character is way more captivating due to her status as a class leader, and her proactive action that made her stand out. It's indeed unfair to compare Sakura with Ichinose, but Ichinose brings a lot more to the table and leaves no room for Sakura. One thing that saves Sakura's character from vanishing is her habit of taking a picture of herself using her camera, and her camera is a nice touch that tells us a lot about Sakura's personality. She is someone with low confidence in front of other people, so she tries to express herself in front of the camera. That method is working, and it's also the reason she used to be a model, but ever since she got a stalker, she decided to hide in ANHS, but her desire to express herself still exists. It's just unfortunate that her story with her camera was never explored further in the future volume. Not just unexplored, Sakura's camera never appears again in the series. It's probably a sign that she no longer needs it to express herself, but since it's never mentioned again outside Volume 2, I doubt readers even remember about it, which is another reason why Volume 2 feels forgotten. Other than Sudo and Sakura, there are a few characters that made a significant appearance in this volume, but just like the two of them, their development feels forgotten because another volume did it way better, to the point that Volume 2 seems insignificant. Take Horikita Manabu for example. He started to acknowledge Ayanokoji's ability in this volume, and even invited him to join the student council, but since Ayanokoji is almost entirely passive in this volume, his invitation seems baseless and forced. In fact, Volume 4.5 and Volume 5 build Ayanokoji and Manabu's relationship better. In Volume 4.5, Manabu figured out that Ayanokoji is the mastermind behind their success in the island exam, and invited him once again to join the student council. In Volume 5, he even accepted Ayanokoji's challenge, which means he truly acknowledges Ayanokoji as an equal. Compared to these two volumes, Volume 2 is really easy to forget. There is also a problem with Ayanokoji's character, because after a little thing he did in Volume 1, Volume 2 takes a step further by letting him become a background character behind Horikita and Ichinose. There are only a few things worth noting from Ayanokoji's actions in this volume, and his passive personality started to make me worried about the future of this series when I first read this volume. It also further amplifies with the direction that this volume takes to solve the problem. It was a story about hard work and overcome a weakness in the first volume, but in this volume we are suddenly presented with a detective story. I could say the writer is still trying to figure out the best way to present the plot, and this method has proven ineffective because it is rarely used again in future volumes. With all those factors combined, it's just natural for the readers to eventually forget about Volume 2, because it is rarely ever mentioned again, and also doesn't have a lot of influence on the future volumes. Even if you read Volume 3 right after reading Volume 1, it wouldn't be hard to follow the story, and that is just how little impact Volume 2 has in the whole series. However, just to be fair, Volume 2 also has a few good aspects that are worth reading. For example, we already learned that Class D is filled with defective students in Volume 1, and Volume 2 proves it by showing us how little the students in Class D think about Sudo, or even think about the future of the class. Even Sudo's friends like Ike and Yamochi didn't show any sign of helping him in his trial, and since we were also introduced to the Ijinose class in this volume, the comparison became way more ironic. This volume also starts to explore more about the school, including the other classes and student council. Even though we only saw a bit of them, it should be enough for the readers to figure out that ANHS took the class system seriously, which was shown by how different Class D students are compared to the others. Class D is once again proven to be defective, but the way they overcome it and catch up with the higher class is one thing that will keep the story alive forever, even if the volume itself is forgotten.